from the income statement. Then you subtract actual charge-offs, okay? Only when an actual charge-off is greater than the provision, okay, will you have a big adjustment to your allowance. Because your allowance should cover all of the actual charge-offs, okay? You also add back any recoveries from previous charge-offs, which don't happen that often. Okay? And that gives you your ending allowance for loan losses, which is up here. So you start with your beginning allowance, then you add in the provision from loan loss, you subtract the actual charge-offs, add recoveries, and you have your ending loan losses. Okay? Your provision for loan losses. All right, so the allowance for loan losses is divided into two parts, okay? Specific and general. Specific reserves, these are reserves that are set aside as banks go through their loan book. They look at the files on individual customers, and if there are red flags like late payments or financial statements at the customers that don't look good, and there's a lot of that going on right now, okay, then the banks will set aside specific reserves, okay? General reserves are for those loans that don't look suspicious, but just from operating history and experience, banks know that someone's going to surprise them in a negative way, so they have to have some reserves set up for that. All right, so the amount of the allowance for loan loss is set by management, but there are tax rules and government regulations, okay, that influence how management will allocate capital, okay, between putting it here and putting it here. What does that mean? That means the more reserves that a bank has in the allowance for loan losses, the lower the earnings will be for that particular year, which means retained earnings won't grow by as much. So a bank that wants to be conservative maintains a higher allowance for loan losses. And that means they'll be less profitable, all things being equal. But investors tend to really respect that. All right. Loans to lesser developed countries require banks to set up a separate loan loss called an allocated transfer reserve. This is not a big deal today, but it was back in the 80s when American banks were loaning lots of money into Central and South America. All right, so I just bring it up for that reason. We don't see that much today, but it was a big deal back in the day. All right. So let's look at loans. This is our last. This is our last clip. This is our last slide in this clip. So types of loans. Okay, commercial and industrial. These are business loans. Okay. Then there are consumer loans for home improvement, cars, boats, education. Then real estate loans, these are for commercial purposes, and the three major types of loans are for retail operations, building shopping centers and malls, offices, and apartments. Okay, and there are two types of loans that happen here in order to have retail, office, and apartments built. You have first you have a construction loan. Once the construction is done, then you have a permanent loan. And then, of course, the biggie, residential mortgages. So don't confuse real estate loans with consumer loans. Okay? Then you have agricultural loans. That's big in the Midwest. Okay? And then you have security loans, which are loans that banks make so that people can purchase investments. Okay? And then there are leases, which for those of you who are well versed in accounting, there's a difference between leasing an asset, which is basically a rental agreement, and buying owning an asset. And so often banks will get into leasing and they will buy property and equipment, and then they'll rent that property and equipment to the customer. And they do this for financial statement purposes. Okay? Then you have non-performing loans, which are related to your allowance for loan losses. Non-performing loans, a category of loans in which borrowers are more than 90 days past due, or they have already declared that they're defaulting on those loans. So please keep this in mind. This sure sounds like an exam question. If a loan is 90 days past due, then it must be classified as a non-performing loan. All right. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll cover slides 14 through 21. Until then, peace out, shalom.